Ever get that feeling like you're kind of on autopilot?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just grabbing your phone the second it buzzes or,
Yeah.
pouring a cup of coffee before you've even like fully woken up.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, turns out you're not alone.
Right.
A whopping 40%
Wow.
of our daily actions are driven by habits,
Mm.
not conscious decisions.
Wow. 40%. That's a lot.
Yeah. And that's according to Duke University research, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So today we're doing a deep dive into these hidden forces that are shaping our lives.
Okay.
And we're going to be exploring Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit.
Okay, great.
And we're going to uncover how habits work, why they have such a grip on us,
Mhm.
and how we can use that knowledge to make real changes in our lives.
I'm excited.
Okay. So let's start with a story that'll make you kind of question everything you thought you knew about memory.
Okay.
So there was this man named Eugene Pauly
Mm-hmm.
who unfortunately lost his memory due to a viral infection. So you'd think that would make daily life impossible, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But here's the kicker. He could still perform complex habits.
Really?
He could walk home from blocks away. He could make himself a meal,
Oh.
all sorts of things without any memory of how he learned to do them.
So it's like his body just knew what to do even though his mind didn't remember.
Exactly.
That's
It
fascinating.
really highlights how habits can take root deeper than conscious thought.
Yeah, totally. It's almost like they're hardwired into us.
Yeah. It's
So how does that even work?
well, it's the basal ganglia at play here.
Okay.
A part of the brain
Mm-hmm.
that's like a mental shortcut for these frequently used actions.
Like a shortcut for our brains.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can think of it as like a well-worn path in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
The more you walk it, the easier it becomes to navigate without even thinking about where you're placing your feet.
Oh, I see. So our brains are always looking for ways to save energy. And habits are the ultimate efficiency hack.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
So the basal ganglia
Okay.
stores these well-worn paths, these habits, so our conscious minds don't have to work so hard.
Yeah.
It frees up mental space
Right.
for focusing on new or complex tasks.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So is there a way to use this to our advantage?
Mm-hmm.
Can we intentionally create these brain paths for good habits?
Absolutely. And one of the best examples of how to do this
Okay.
comes from the world of advertising.
Really?
You've heard of Pepsodent toothpaste?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, back when toothbrushing wasn't exactly a daily ritual for most people,
Yeah.
a pioneering ad man named Claude C. Hopkins
Okay.
figured out how to make it one.
Wow. How did you do that?
Well, this was way before influencers, right?
Yeah.
So he really understood the power of what's called the habit loop,
Okay, the habit loop.
which is like a three-part system,
Okay.
almost like a recipe for habit formation. So there's the cue, the routine, and the reward.
Cue, routine, and reward.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
So Hopkins knew he needed a simple, everyday cue
Okay.
to trigger the routine of toothbrushing.
Okay.
And he found it in something most people didn't even realize they had. Tooth film.
Tooth film.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can just imagine people running their tongues over their teeth and going what is this?
That's pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, and so feeling that film became the cue.
Yep.
Hopkins then promised a reward, sparkling white teeth.
Right. Who wouldn't want that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like that, millions of people started brushing regularly,
Wow.
thanks to Hopkins' understanding of the habit loop.
That's amazing. So he kind of hacked our brains with a simple cue and a desirable reward.
Exactly.
It's both impressive and a little bit unnerving when you think about it.
Yeah, it does raise some questions about the ethics of influence, which we can delve into later.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's undeniable that understanding this loop can be used for both good and bad.
Totally.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the power of this.
Yeah.
But what about cravings?
Mm-hmm.
Where do they fit into this loop?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I know I get cravings, but is there more to it than just wanting something?
Yeah, cravings, they're the secret ingredient that kind of supercharges the habit loop.
Okay.
So think about it. You don't just brush your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
You crave that feeling of cleanliness,
Right.
the minty freshness.
Yeah.
And that craving emerges as your brain starts associating the cue with the reward.
So it's like the anticipation of the reward becomes part of the habit itself.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
businesses like Cinnabon are masters at this.
Cinnabon, really?
Oh, yeah. Have you ever noticed how they strategically place their bakeries
Okay.
away from food courts in malls?
Okay, yeah.
So that delicious smell kind of wafts through the entire building, and it hits you when you least expect it. So by the time you actually see a Cinnabon,
Okay.
you've already been primed with that delicious smell.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And the craving is kicking in.
Yeah, so they're kind of manipulating our senses.
Exactly. They've tapped into the power of that craving to drive the habit loop.
Wow.
It's not just about the cinnamon roll itself. It's about the anticipation, the feeling of indulgence that it promises.
Okay, now I'm both hungry and slightly scared of my own brain.
Yeah.
But if cravings are so strong, how do we ever break bad habits? Isn't it all about willpower? Just like white-knuckling our way through it?
Well, willpower definitely plays a role.
Okay.
But it's not the be-all and end-all. Research by Mark Mervin has shown that willpower is like a muscle.
Okay.
You use it too much, it gets tired.
So spending all day resisting that donut in the break room
Exactly.
means I'll have less willpower left to hit the gym after work.
Exactly. It's about strategically managing your willpower resources throughout the day.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
So what are some strategies for making sure we don't deplete our willpower reserves? How do we avoid getting to that point of exhaustion?
Well, setting clear goals is crucial.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to eat healthier,
Okay.
try something specific.
Okay.
Like, I'll swap my afternoon soda for a sparkling water. It's less overwhelming for your willpower that way.
Okay.
Also, try to avoid unnecessary temptations.
Okay.
If you know you can't resist those chips in pantry,
Yeah.
don't even buy them.
So it's about setting ourselves up for success
Exactly.
by making the healthier choice the easier choice.
Precisely. And don't forget to reward yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It reinforces the habit loop in a positive way. Celebrate those small wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is making a lot of sense.
Good.
But what about those times when willpower just isn't enough? Like, think about people battling addiction.
Yeah.
How do they overcome such deeply ingrained habits?
That's a great question.
It feels like more than just setting goals and avoiding temptation.
You're right. It often requires something deeper, a shift in belief, and the power of social support.
Okay.
Take the story of Tony Dungy,
Okay.
a football coach who transformed losing teams.
Okay.
He didn't just tell his players to play better, he helped them develop new routines and reactions.
Oh, yeah.
It was about changing their habits on and off the field.
So it's not just telling someone to change, it's about like creating an environment that supports those new habits.
That's a great way to put it. And research on Alcoholics Anonymous shows that believing in the possibility of change,
Okay.
believing you can cope without falling back into old patterns,
Right.
is incredibly powerful.
Okay.
And having a support network makes that belief even stronger.
Yeah.
It's not about going it alone.
Right. We're social creatures.
Right.
And we can leverage that to our advantage when trying to change habits.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about individual habits. But what about the habits of entire organizations?
Oh, that's interesting.
Do companies have habits too?
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
Organizational habits or routines
Okay.
are the invisible forces that shape a company's culture,
Okay.
and they can be just as powerful as individual habits.
So just like individuals, companies can get stuck in ruts,
Exactly.
following routines without even questioning them.
Yeah, and sometimes those routines are beneficial, but other times they can lead to stagnation or even disaster.
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, a powerful illustration of this is the story of Paul O'Neill and Alcoa.
Okay.
When he took over as CEO,
Yeah.
Alcoa was struggling.
Okay.
But instead of focusing on profits or productivity,
Okay.
O'Neill made worker safety his top priority.
That seems like a strange place to start.
It does, doesn't it?
When a company is facing like financial challenges, why safety?
Well, O'Neill understood that changing one key habit,
Okay.
the company's approach to safety, could transform the entire culture.
Oh, okay.
He knew that if he could get everyone focused on safety, it would lead to improvements in every other area.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Changing one habit leads to positive changes elsewhere.
Exactly. And it worked.
Wow.
Alcoa's profits soared under O'Neill's leadership,
Wow, really?
and the company became one of the safest in the world.
That's a pretty compelling example of how changing even one seemingly small organizational habit can create huge ripple effects.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing these organizational habits can be just as detrimental as good ones.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
A chilling example is the King's Cross fire in London's underground system.
Oh, right.
Deeply ingrained routines and poor communication between departments
Okay.
prevented an effective response to the fire.
So those ingrained habits can actually become dangerous
Yeah,
if they make a system inflexible.
exactly. It highlights the importance of constantly evaluating our routines. Both individually and within organizations, we need to ask if they are truly serving us
Right.
or leading us down a dangerous path.
So how do we change those ingrained organizational habits?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a much bigger challenge than changing an individual habit.
It certainly can be,
Yeah.
but the principles are similar.
Okay.
It often requires strong leadership,
Okay.
willing to challenge the status quo,
Mm.
and create a sense of urgency for change.
So you need someone to come in and like shake things up, break those ingrained patterns.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that even deeply rooted habits can be shifted with the right approach.
Okay, that makes sense. But haven't marketers been doing this for years?
Oh, yeah.
Using their understanding of habit loops to influence our purchasing decisions?
Absolutely. And they're getting increasingly sophisticated at it.
Yeah.
Think about the way products are arranged in grocery stores.
No.
Those bright displays of fruits and vegetables at the entrance are no accident.
Mhm.
Marketers know if you start your shopping trip with healthy choices,
Okay.
you'll feel less guilty about indulging in those cookies later on.
So they're playing on our desire to feel good about ourselves,
Exactly.
even if it means ultimately buying things we might not actually need.
Exactly. They're masters at tapping into our subconscious desires and using them to shape our buying habits.
And what about music? How does the music industry use our habits to make certain songs become hits?
That's a good question.
I'm guessing it's not all about pure talent.
You're right, there's a lot of strategy involved.
Yeah.
One clever tactic is called sandwiching.
Sandwiching.
Yeah, it's where radio stations play a new, unfamiliar song
Yeah,
between
okay.
two popular hits.
Okay.
This makes the new song feel more familiar and appealing to listeners
Okay.
because it's nestled between something they already like.
It's like they're sneaking it into our brains through association.
Exact.
But this whole idea of manipulating habits, whether it's for selling toothpaste or getting us to listen to a certain song,
Yeah.
it raises some ethical questions.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder where we draw the line between harmless influence and outright manipulation. And how do we protect ourselves from being unconsciously swayed by these tactics?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
And one I'm really interested in exploring further.
Well, stay tuned,
Okay.
because that's exactly what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I can't wait. Okay, so we've seen how understanding the habit loop can be used to sell toothpaste, cinnamon rolls, and even influence our music choices. But where does that leave us? Are we just puppets to these powerful forces?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember, awareness is the first step to taking back control.
Okay.
And while some may use this knowledge for less than noble purposes,
Right.
it can also be a force for positive change.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because thinking about manipulation, it makes me think of movements like the civil rights movement.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They weren't selling a product,
Right.
but they were definitely trying to change deeply ingrained habits and social norms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic example. Think about the Montgomery bus boycott,
Okay.
sparked by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat.
Right.
It wasn't just her individual act of courage that mattered.
Right.
It was how that act spread through the community.
Right. It became this collective habit of resistance, a refusal to accept the status quo.
Exactly. And a key factor in its success
Okay.
was the power of social influence,
Okay.
particularly something called weak ties.
Wait, weak ties?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So think about it this way. Your close friends and family,
Okay.
those are your strong ties.
Okay.
But you also have connections with acquaintances, colleagues, people you might chat with at the grocery store or the gym.
Right.
Those are your weak ties.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So those weaker connections can actually have a surprising amount of influence.
Exactly. They bridge different social circles,
Okay.
expose us to new ideas and behaviors.
Okay.
In the case of the Montgomery bus boycott,
Okay.
those weak ties were essential for spreading the message
Right.
and amplifying the pressure to participate.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
You might be more willing to join a boycott
Mm-hmm.
if you see that your neighbors and coworkers are doing it too.
Exactly.
It's like that sense of, if they can do it, I can too.
That's the power of social proof.
Okay.
We're wired to conform, to follow the lead of others,
Right.
especially when we're in uncertain situations. And that can be harnessed for positive change, just as it can be exploited for less ethical purposes.
Okay, so this brings us back to those ethical considerations we touched on earlier.
Right.
It seems like understanding the habit loop is like having a powerful tool.
Yeah.
It can be used for good or for bad.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. And as we become more aware of how our habits are shaped, it's crucial to be mindful of the forces that are influencing us.
Right.
Because as we've seen, those forces aren't always obvious.
I keep thinking back to that example from the book about Target predicting pregnancies based on shopping data.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible how much they could infer about people's lives.
I know, it's crazy.
Just by analyzing what they were buying.
It really is. It's a fascinating example of the power of data and predictive analytics. But it also raises questions about privacy and manipulation.
Right.
Should companies be able to use our data in this way?
Right.
Even if it means offering us products or services we might genuinely find useful.
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
On one hand, I love personalized recommendations. It makes life easier. But knowing a company has that much insight into my life feels kind of unsettling.
It is. It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
And as consumers, we need to be informed about how our data is being used and make conscious choices about what we're willing to share.
Okay, so awareness is key. But what about those of us battling bad habits?
Right.
We know they're not serving us.
Yeah.
But we still struggle to break free. Is there a practical framework?
Yeah.
A step-by-step guide to changing those ingrained patterns?
There is, and thankfully it's less about brute willpower and more about understanding the mechanics of the habit loop.
Okay.
First, you need to identify the routine,
Okay.
the actual behavior you want to change. What's something you'd like to change about your own habits?
Well, I've been trying to cut back on late-night snacking.
Okay, yeah.
It's a bad habit I just can't seem to shake. So that's my routine.
Okay.
But how do I actually change it?
The next step is to experiment with rewards.
Okay.
Every habit has a reward,
Okay.
even if it's not immediately obvious.
Okay.
So why do you think you snack late at night? Is it the taste of the food, the feeling of fullness? Or maybe it's just a way to de-stress after a long day?
I guess it's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I love the taste of those salty snacks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does help me unwind. But I know it's not good for my health or my sleep.
Right. So the key is to find healthier rewards
Okay.
that satisfy the same cravings.
Okay.
So instead of reaching for those chips,
Okay.
what if you tried going for a walk, taking a relaxing bath, or reading a book?
Okay.
Pay attention to how you feel afterward and see if it provides a similar feeling of relaxation and satisfaction.
So it's about replacing the unhealthy reward with a healthier one
Exactly.
that still meets that underlying need.
Exactly. Now let's move on to the cue.
Okay.
This is the trigger that sets the habit in motion.
Okay.
To figure this out, play detective.
Okay.
Keep a journal and track every time you get that urge to snack. Note the time, your location, your mood,
Okay.
anything that might be relevant.
Okay. So if I notice that I always crave snacks at 9 p.m. while watching TV,
Yeah.
that's a pretty clear cue.
You got it, and once you've identified the cue,
Okay.
you can start to change it. Maybe try watching TV in a different room.
Okay.
Or have a healthy snack prepared in advance so you're not tempted to reach for the chips.
So it's like anticipating the trigger and setting myself up for success.
Exactly. Now the final step is having a plan.
Okay.
Don't just say, I'm going to stop snacking late at night.
Right.
Be specific.
Okay.
When I get the urge to snack at 9 p.m., I'll make myself a cup of herbal tea and read for 30 minutes.
So it's not enough to identify the cue and the reward.
Right.
You need a concrete action plan
Exactly.
for how you're going to respond differently when that cue arises.
You nailed it. The more specific and actionable your plan, the more likely you are to stick with it.
This is great advice. It's like having a roadmap for navigating those tricky moments when our habits try to take over. But do these same principles apply to changing organizational habits?
Absolutely. The principles are similar, but the scale is obviously much larger.
Yeah.
Changing an organization's habits often requires strong leadership to set clear goals and create a sense of urgency, but it also requires buy-in from employees at all levels.
So it's not just about the CEO dictating new rules. It's about getting everyone on board, and understanding why the change is necessary.
Precisely. It's about creating a culture where people feel empowered to contribute
Yeah.
and embrace new ways of doing things. And it often requires clear communication, consistent reinforcement of the new behaviors,
Right.
and celebrating those early successes.
It's fascinating how these principles of habit change can apply to so many different areas of life.
It really is, from brushing our teeth to leading a company.
Right.
Understanding the power of habit gives us incredible leverage to shape our lives
Yeah.
and the world around us.
Right. This has been so insightful. I feel like I'm starting to see habits in a whole new light.
Yeah,
Not just as things we do automatically,
right.
but as forces that we can understand and influence.
Exactly.
As we've been talking about the power of habit, it's made me wonder about the whole concept of free will.
Oh, interesting.
If so much of our behavior is driven by these unconscious patterns,
Right.
do we really have control over our choices?
That's a question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for ages.
Yeah.
And as we delve deeper into the workings of the brain, it only gets more complex.
I mean, think about that case from the book about Kenneth Parks,
Yeah.
the man who killed his mother-in-law while sleepwalking.
Right, right.
He was acquitted of murder
Wow.
because the jury believed he wasn't in control of his actions.
That's wild.
It's tragic, but it also makes you think,
Yeah.
what other hidden forces might be shaping our behavior without us even realizing it?
The Parks case is a stark illustration of how powerful these unconscious drives can be.
Yeah.
It raises profound questions about responsibility and the nature of consciousness itself.
It's almost like there's this constant tug of war happening inside our brains between our conscious intentions
Yeah.
and these deeply ingrained habits.
That's a great way to put it. And while we may never fully unravel the mysteries of free will,
Right.
understanding the interplay between our conscious and unconscious minds
Yeah.
is crucial for making positive changes.
So even if we can't completely control where our habits come from,
Right.
we can still choose how we respond to them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Awareness is the key.
Okay.
Once we recognize those ingrained patterns, we can start to create new pathways, new choices.
It's like we can rewire our brains to create habits that align with our goals and values.
Exactly. Instead of feeling trapped by our habits, we can see them as opportunities for growth and transformation.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into the world of habit.
It has been, yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of the forces that shape my actions.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, me too. And for our listeners who want to keep exploring this topic,
Yeah.
we highly recommend checking out Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit.
It's a great book.
There's so much more to discover.
Totally.
Before we sign off,
Okay.
we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay. I like it.
What's one habit you'd like to change? And what's one small step you can take today to start making that change a reality?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Remember, even small shifts in our daily routines
Right?
can lead to big changes over time. So choose wisely
Choose wisely.
and happy habit hacking.